This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Checking off the boxes on your to-do list is a great feeling. And when it comes to checking off coverage, a State Farm agent can help you choose an option that's right for you. Whether you prefer talking in person, on the phone, or using the award-winning app, it's nice knowing you have help finding coverage that best fits your needs. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
For the first time ever, you can get all of ESPN in the new ESPN app, along with Disney Plus and Hulu, with one incredible offer. The most live sports, biggest blockbusters, and most talked about shows. Get it all in one bundle for $29.99 a month for 12 months. Visit Disney Plus Hulu ESPNBundle.com for details. Ad-supported plan auto-renews at regular price. Currently $35.99 a month, subject to change. Unless canceled. Ends 1/5/26. Terms apply.
Unfiltered discussions. Unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hi, this is The Last Show. Happy Tuesday. I'm your host, David. My tiny black cat named Tomato says hello. But who cares? Here's what you're going to learn on tonight's program. Beer, cannabis, or sex? Which one makes you tastier to mosquitoes? It's a trick question. It's all of them. In 10 minutes time, the science says you smell extra good to mosquitoes when you do all the fun stuff. Better pack some bug spray. Although researchers discovered one thing you can wear that isn't bug spray that might help you avoid those bites. So stay tuned for that. Afterwards, the odd tale making its rounds on the internet of a woman who planned everything right for her anniversary, and in response, her partner bought her a $100 gift certificate to a video game store. Keep in mind, this woman's not a gamer. Halfway through the hour, we'll cover why that went so wrong. That's some of tonight's show. There'll be more, but for now, let's jump in.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Dun 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 dun. That's a breaking news jingle because we couldn't afford the royalties for a actual breaking news jingle. There is current, important, meaningful, intergalactic British tea news that you need to know about, and we are joined by foreign tea expert in London, England, who knows all things tea, Tony Five, to share this news from literally out of this world. Tony, this story has everything. It's got space, it's got tea, end of list.
No, and it's got a British space scientist, my friend. David, this is literally on the edge of my seat news. I cannot believe. What's better, David, than a cup of tea?
Well, if you're British, nothing. If you're not British, 7 to 30 things.
Well, I would say a cup of tea in space, my friend. That's right. Have the black stuff in the black stuff.
Oh, I like it. And so British scientists, they know that if we're going to colonize the moon and Mars, they simply will be excluded on perhaps racist grounds if they cannot have tea in these intergalactic places, because that simply will not do. British people will simply not abide by not having tea. So what did they set out to research?
Well, David, as you know, the British Empire covered most of the Earth about 1,000 years ago. And what we want to do is start our first colony in space, my friend. And in order to get the workers out there, to get the people to build railroads from one moon to the other, what we need to do is be powered by tea, David. And what they've done is they've had lunar soil, so soil that's come back from the moon, and they've managed to grow tea in it, my friend, so that it can be picked and made into a moon tea.
His Majesty himself likely funded this research. I mean, I don't know that. I just made it up, but it seems like it could be true.
Correct.
So researchers at the University of Kent, they got some soil that was returned from the moon, and they grew tea in it.
Yep.
It's safe to say that British scientists are over the moon over this one. You like that one? You like that one?
Yeah, and they probably celebrated with a cup of tea. That's the irony of all this. Earth-based tea. They celebrated moon tea with earth tea. They basically cultivated it with the right lighting, temperature, humidity, all that sort of stuff. And apparently it flourished. It was grown, and they left it to grow in terrestrial conditions. But David, I have some bad news.
Oh, what is it?
Martian soil they could not grow tea in the Martian soil, my friend. So we will not go to Mars. We will go to the moon, but we will avoid Mars like the plague.
It looks like we won't be seeing any Union Jacks on Mars anytime soon. Now, at the press release where these scientists were making their announcement that they could grow tea on the moon, in theory, at least in its soil on Earth with Earth nutrients and all that stuff, do you think when asked about it, the scientists said it's one small sip for man?
One giant tea bag for mankind?
I don't think that.
Do you not think that would work?
I'm not going to engage with that one because for me to address it any further would violate all decency standards.
I'm surprised we got this far without mentioning any other proclivity. But yes, you are correct, my friend. But what it means is it's quite amazing, really, because you never really think about that, like growing crops and stuff, and like the most like basic things. But it's amazing that somebody thought of using like soil from the moon and growing stuff in it. That's amazing.
Well, if we're going to have people on these rocks, planets in the future, we're going to have to feed them. And every ounce that you bring up into space costs another $100 billion in fuel or something like that, give or take. I'm just saying the loads need to be light. And so if they can just bring a case full of seeds and then a few things to spray on the soil, they can grow their own food. They don't have to bring up, their freeze-dried McDonald's or whatever.
Well, I remember seeing this documentary called The Martian with Matt Damon. And, in that, it was very technical. He grew potatoes. So we could have had fries, jacket potatoes, baked potatoes, broiled potatoes, raw potatoes. And I thought that the future of humanity would just be based on potatoes. And I'm sure there must be a condition where you're allergic to potatoes.
I don't think that was a documentary. Well, it seems like it's the early stages of the research of growing food, but I guess tea, if we're not going to exclude our British friends, is an important thing to have on the moon. Are you proud that this is the space research that's coming out of your country, Tony?
Well, I'm not only proud. I'm excited that they've found tea, intergalactic tea. I'm happy that it was the University of Kent. I'd be devastated if it was another country, especially a foreign nuclear country. I'd have been devastated by that. Like you hear about all these horrible things in the world, but the foreign news that a foreign power had developed tea on the moon would have put me over the edge. It
looks like the Brits won the space tea race. You might not have won the real space race. You didn't put a man on the moon, but at least you theoretically put tea there, or at least tea in lunar soil on Earth in a lab at a university.
I mean, if anything, the hot beverage space wars have begun. You heard it here first, people. This is what happens.
Britain's back!
Exactly. This will be known. Like they had the Cold War? This will be like the Cold Brew War. You like that? Hey, you like that, people? Well, that's what I'm getting paid for the bucks for.
That's coffee, but not important. Tea, coffee, it's all the same, right?
Absolutely. I can't stand coffee.
Yeah.
Mars can have coffee for all I care.
Yeah. I wonder if that'd be really interesting. Coffee on Mars, tea on the moon. Let's keep talking about food. I want to go to shrimp.
Oh, yeah.
Coincidentally, my girlfriend's favorite food.
Yep.
And this story takes us to the U.S., to Seattle, where a seafood distributor selling food to Kroger, like the Kroger, the grocery store. It's like a big...
Kroger, the big grocery store, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think we have them here in the Northeast, but it's definitely a huge chain around the U.S., and they are selling shrimp that were recently recalled, not because they were contaminated with salmonella, not because they had botulism, not because they had gone bad or because the shrimp were damaged. No, they were recalled because those shrimp were radioactive.
Were they glowing green?
I don't think so, but they did have cesium-137, a radioactive isotope of the element cesium. I guess the great question for me is, how does radioactive shrimp make it from, how does it even happen at the plant where they process the raw shrimp and then all the way to the grocery store shelves? Like, I've never even thought to worry about foodborne radioactivity.
I think you're missing the big picture here, David. What happened to the other 136 cesiums?
Yeah, that is great. That's how science works.
Yeah, like, to be fair, prawns are great. And they have caused me some of the greatest times of my life. And they have caused me some of the saddest times of my life where I've had out-of-date prawns. And I have prayed to Jesus, Jehovah, every named person beginning with J for the pain to subside and for my insides to come out. So I feel for these radioactive prawns. I feel for people that have eaten the radioactive prawns. It's just terrible. And like the list of all the places that have sold it in 30 states, dude. City Markets, Bakers, Dillon's, Food for Less, Foodsco, Fred Meyer. Oh my God, the list goes on. There are going to be people out there who have got radioactivity. It's going to be Can you imagine we have shrimp men? This is like the beginning of a comic book.
An origin story of a shrimp man who, twitch his body to get away from danger very quickly.
And smell really bad if he hides behind a radiator.
Food officials are saying it's a small amount, it's a small health risk, but enough to recall it. No one should be worried about glowing green or getting all kinds of radiation death. But the way it happened was there was some metal, like maybe a metal plant near where the processing facility was for this shrimp. They were Indonesian shrimp, or at least of origin.
Of course, blame the foreigners.
Yeah, anyway, the shrimp factory next to the metal factory, boom, that's how you get radioactive shrimp. Tony, what a pleasure it was.
David, I am going to go and have a shrimp cocktail now and a little bit of Martian coffee.
Sounds delicious. Tony 5 is our foreign correspondent in London, England. After the break, a scientist who discovered beer, sex, and cannabis. If you use them, or do them, mosquitoes will want to bite you more. I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show. Details up next.
Routine, adjective. Used to describe an individual whose spirit is unyielding, unconstrained, one who navigates life on their own terms, effortlessly. They do not always show up on time, but when they arrive, you notice. An individual confident in their contradictions. They know the rules but behave as if they do not exist. Routine, the new fragrance by Miu Miu, defined by you.
This is the show that proves science is funny and relationships are rocket science. The Last Show with David Cooper.
That's the sound of me making the sound of a mosquito buzzing. And if you hate being bit by mosquitoes, there's new research that says all you have to do is avoid beer, avoid weed, and avoid sleeping with other people. All the fun stuff. I'm here with someone who's done research on this, and I love that they've done research on this. He's a biophysicist and mosquito researcher from Radboud University Medical Center in the Netherlands. His name is Dr. Felix Hol. Felix, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
At first, it seems like you studied something in earnest, like what causes a mosquito to bite someone. But the way you went around this study, or the way you actually did it, was pretty fun. You did it at a music festival, right?
Oh yeah, but I mean, like doing science is fun in general, I think. So this was not the only fun project we ever did. But, well, I mean, we also studied this question in our regular lab setting. But indeed, so I guess the story that we're talking about now was done at a music festival. So this is, it's called Lowlands Music Festival. It has existed for, I think, like 30 years or so. And they always have a science component to it. So it is a huge music festival. It's like 65,000 people. It's 3 days. And they always have a small component that is about science.
I love that. It's like a science and music. You see festivals that aren't just one thing. So you decided to test whether people would be attractive to mosquitoes at this thing. What possessed you to do that?
Well, because I find it a very interesting question. I'm a mosquito scientist, so I'm really curious why mosquitoes like some people way more than they like others. But in addition to me, it seems like this is a question that many people have, right? You know, when you're at the campfire, when you're camping, when you're, outside at the bar, people always have this thing that one of them always gets all the bites and the other people don't seem to get any. So why is that? So I thought, it's something I want to study. It's also something that probably a lot of the people at the festival are kind of curious about. So let's try it out.
I actually have an adaptation that makes me perhaps a superhero. When mosquitoes land on me, they bite me, but then they fly away and leave absolutely zero mark. For whatever reason, I'm not allergic to the stuff mosquitoes inject into you. Have you heard of this adaptation before? Am I a superhero?
Well, you clearly are a superhero.
Thank you.
So I haven't heard it that much this way around, that there's absolutely no
allergy, I guess.
Like no bump, no rash, no nothing. Although, you sometimes hear it, but it's true that, mosquitoes, when they bite you, they spit their saliva into your skin, and you can have an immune reaction to that. And it can depend a lot on people, but also some people, I hear that quite often, that I live in the Netherlands, we have a particular type of mosquito here. Then people go on a holiday to Italy or France or something, and there's different species of mosquitoes there that have different saliva, and all of a sudden they get these huge reactions, whereas people here the same people would only get a really tiny reaction. So this, that differs is actually quite common.
Okay, so I might not be not allergic to regional mosquito saliva, but at least in North America, I'm immune and therefore a superhero. Let's stop talking about me. So how did you test the attractiveness of individuals at a music festival? I guess you gave them a survey to ask what they'd been doing that day?
Yeah, so we did a couple of things. So first, we wanted to just quantify how strongly do these people attract mosquitoes. So we brought a lot of cages with mosquitoes. So we just had like a small plexiglass box in which we put something like 25 mosquitoes. And the wall of that box was made in such a way that it had really tiny holes in it. And those tiny holes were so small that when somebody pressed their arm against the side of a cage, their smell, so their odor, could go inside the cage. And the mosquitoes could fly towards them because they can smell the person. But the holes were so small that they actually could not bite through it. So the people were not actually getting bitten, but the mosquitoes were trying to bite them. So it's basically as if you're teasing them with like a slice of pizza or something.
So it's sort of like a competition. Who's the most attractive to mosquitoes? And people in the festival were lining up to get not bit, but at least have the mosquitoes fly close to them.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so on the other side of the cage, there was some sugar water because mosquitoes also like sugar water. We had a little camera that was filming the cage, and through that camera, we wrote some software that could basically track the mosquito flight. And using that software, we could just give a number to everybody. Like, you attracted 40 mosquitoes because mosquitoes can, of course, just, they can land, they can fly away, they can land again. So you can have pretty high numbers. And like that, we really saw a huge diversity. We saw some people that put their arm against the cage, and in like 20 seconds, all the mosquitoes are all over them, trying to bite them, super active. Whereas for other people, it was really the opposite. And then, of course, there's everything in between.
Did it surprise you that there was such great variance in how much mosquitoes liked some people versus others?
Well, I guess anecdotally we knew that, right? Because we know, like I know that I'm less attractive than my partner, for instance, right? So in that sense, we expected that. But the diversity in this population was really, it was very large. There were some people that the mosquitoes really wouldn't get close to. So that was indeed a bit of a surprise. Well, so that was the first thing we did. We quantified how strongly attractive they were. And then indeed, as you said, we also had them fill out a survey. So the survey had all kinds of questions on, behavior, diet, substance use, alcohol intake, all kinds of things. We also did like a breathalyzer test. And then we actually took a skin sample. So we just had people swap their own skin and we used that to determine what kind of microbes we could find on the skin.
And that's where the fun stuff comes in. Beer, cannabis, and of course sharing a bed with someone. So there's no risk of me ever having to deal with that because I have a lousy personality.
No, that's not no.
But those were the things that really stood out, which is so funny. It's like all the fun stuff means mosquitoes are going to fly right towards you.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what it looks like. They just, maybe they have the same taste as the general party animal. Yeah.
Why do you think that is? What would be the mechanism for a mosquito to be more attractive to me if I've chugged a beer or whatever?
Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately, this study doesn't really allow us to answer that question, right? Because, in this study, we have data on how strong these people attract mosquitoes, on their characteristics, and we can see correlations. So we can see that the people that drank beer attract more mosquitoes compared to the ones that did not. But the mechanism, we really don't have any, we don't have any evidence for that. Of course, we can speculate. Could be that beer makes you smell different because mosquitoes use their sense of smell a lot to find people. Could also be that, beer modifies your behavior. Maybe the beer drinkers are, dancing more ecstatically, or maybe they sweat more, maybe they're a little bit warmer. So, this could be mediated through all kinds of effects.
Interesting. And I suppose sharing a bed with someone, I know I'd like to kind of imply that it's sex, but it's really just sharing a bed with another person might have more odors on you, more sweat on you, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, in the questionnaire we asked, did you sleep together with someone? We didn't specifically ask if people were having sex. That was just because, the ethical approval for the survey would have taken longer if you asked very explicit sex questions, although we were allowed to ask explicit drug use questions. And, in the Netherlands, stuff like cannabis is legal, but ecstasy, cocaine is not, and that we could still ask.
And the harder drugs, were the mosquitoes attracted to that?
No, there we actually did not see. We did not see any effect. So basically, any of the other drugs, amphetamines, cocaine, ecstasy, a bunch of other stuff, we did not see an effect.
But kids at home, we're not saying don't do these drugs to get bitten by mosquitoes, or avoid it at least. We're just saying what the science says. Were there anything that repelled mosquitoes specifically? My understanding that sunscreen might have had that effect.
Yeah, so sunscreen, that was a pretty clear effect. Sunscreen really seemed to work a bit like a repellent. I hadn't heard that before, haven't seen that in the scientific literature, so this was a bit of a surprise. At the same time, when you think about it, sunscreen makes you smell differently. It also puts a bit of a layer on your skin that maybe keeps some of the sweaty smells in. So maybe that's how it works. But we clearly saw this effect.
Any other things cause mosquitoes to fly away from you, or is it just avoiding beer, cannabis, and sharing a bed?
Well, no, a recent shower. So we basically asked when people last showered, and the people that had their shower most recently, so within 6 hours before the test, they were actually most attractive. So it seems like showering longer ago makes you less attractive, and that was a bit counterintuitive to what I thought.
Interesting. I have terrible hygiene, so maybe this is part of the reason I'm a superhero and don't really get bit by mosquitoes.
Yeah, it's ideal.
Well, I love that you're a mosquito researcher. I love that you did this science, and I'm really glad you came on the show to share it with us, Felix.
The pleasure was likewise.
Dr. Felix Hol is a biophysicist and mosquito researcher from Radboud University Medical Center in the Netherlands. All right, up next, a woman prepared for an anniversary. She did everything right, cooked, bought a great gift for her man. And in response, he buys her a $100 gift certificate to a video game store. Keep in mind, this woman, not a gamer. So after the break, I just have so many questions for where this went wrong, don't you? That's what we'll cover in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Eczema isn't always obvious, but it's real. And so is the relief from Ebglyss. After an initial dosing phase, about 4 in 10 people taking Ebglyss achieved itch relief and clear or almost clear skin at 16 weeks. And most of those people maintain skin that's still more clear at 1 year with monthly dosing.
Ebglyss, lebrikizumab LBKZ, a 250 milligram per 2 milliliter injection, is a prescription medicine used to treat adults and children 12 years of age and older who weigh at least 88 pounds or 40 kilograms with moderate to severe eczema, also called atopic dermatitis, that is not well controlled with prescription therapies used on the skin or topicals, or who cannot use topical therapies. Ebglyss can be used with or without topical corticosteroids. Don't use if you're allergic to Ebglyss. Allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Eye problems can occur. Tell your doctor if you have new or worsening eye problems. You should not receive a live vaccine when treated with Ebglyss. Before starting Ebglyss, tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection.
Searching for real relief? Ask your doctor about Ebglyss and visit ebglyss.lilly.com or call 1-800-LILY-RX or 1-800-545-5979.
Broadcasting intimate details and useless information from an undisclosed location in New York City. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Anniversaries. They're supposed to be celebrations of love, effort, and commitment, but one story making the rounds online shows how quickly they can turn into something else. A wife spent weeks planning her second anniversary, saving to buy her husband a smartwatch she'd been eyeing. She wrapped it, she cooked him his favorite meal, she set the mood with candles. His gift in return, a $100 gift card to his favorite gaming store, which he framed as something they could both use because she simply watches him play. For her, it felt like a gesture not meant for her, and after being told she was ungrateful, she left to spend the night at her sister's. Let's unpack this one and discuss why this went so wrong here with Laurel van der Toorn, who runs Laurel Therapy Collective, serving California and Florida. She's a licensed therapist. Laurel, welcome to the show.
Hi.
This story, when you read about it online, did your eyes roll so far back into your head that they're still there to this day?
Not quite. I mean, I hear stories like this all day, every day in my practice. People are coming to talk primarily about relationship issues. And my first question when I read this was, This was the first time something like this happened? They've been married 2 years. I had a lot of questions. Yeah.
When someone has this level of selfishness, this can't be like an isolated incident. And if it is, probably it's not driving the woman or the other person to post online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when I am working with individuals, I am only hearing one side of the story. Similarly here, only hearing one side of the story. Objectively, it looks pretty bad, right? Sure. But I'm really curious what was going on with this guy. Does he feel like really anxious and not know what to do around anniversaries? Has he really shown up with a big gesture in the past and this is why this seemed surprising? Or are they just kind of like really out of that honeymoon phase now and she's seeing his behavior more clearly? I don't know. And if it were someone sitting in front of me, I would have a lot of follow-up questions that weren't covered.
Well, I guess hearing what you're saying, we could maybe split this into two. One, we're just getting a little slice of perhaps selfish behavior in an otherwise complete picture where the boyfriend isn't like that or the husband isn't like that. And then on the other hand, you get someone who this is just like common behavior for them.
Totally. Or, it's maybe somewhere in the middle, but objectively, it does look pretty bad. I mean, you don't get your partner something you would like for a holiday or an anniversary, unless it's a shared experience, which maybe that's what he was going for, but it doesn't sound like this woman is a gamer, right?
No.
If he had gotten tickets to an event they would both enjoy, or, a game that they both love to play, and it's like their thing, okay. But that doesn't sound like what happened.
No, and she's probably only watching him play video games if she's not a gamer to be nice to him, So this is a very nice, my girlfriend won't watch me play video games. She's like, that's your time, that's your alone time, I'm not getting involved. This seems like a very nice gesture, and he's kind of throwing it in his face. Again, I'm completely speculating here.
Yeah. Well, and let me just say, all the people that I've worked with, women that have engaged in this watching men play video games, just stop. Like, it's really not serving the relationship. Unless you love to play, unless you yourself are a gamer, go for it. Or if there's some like very intentional, you requested instruction in something, like, okay. But this is not a romantic activity. It's not even really parallel play. It's someone doing something they love and you just observing. And it's very rarely reciprocated in the people that I work with.
Is giving the girlfriend who is not a gamer, if the girlfriend is a gamer, then maybe this is a great present, who knows, but is giving them a $100 gift certificate to a video game store, is this kind of like the modern version of the husband buying the wife the vacuum in the 1960s, just like a totally tone-deaf, borderline sexist gesture?
I mean, possibly, yeah. I mean, I think I would argue that everyone benefits from a vacuum, and not everyone benefits from a gaming gift card. But yes, social commentary around domestic labor and expectations, absolutely a problem.
Now, I swear I'm not just using you as a therapist on the show as an unpaid consultant to help me plan what I'm going to buy my girlfriend for our anniversary, but let's talk about gift giving. And I guess the wider conversation here is like love languages, expressing love. What are some tricks? Like if you had this husband coming to you just before he was about to do this, how would you put him on the right path to do better with the gift giving?
Yeah. A lot of people feel a lot of anxiety around giving gifts because they feel like there's a lot of pressure and expectation. And I feel like he just threw in the towel on this one, that he felt like there was some expectation. It gave him a lot of anxiety. And that would be my generous interpretation of what happened. It could also just be that he's a sexist jerk. But I would encourage people to think of experiences as gifts, because those we tend to go more physical when actually experiences can be really fantastic gifts. So if you're someone that kind of seems to clam up around gift giving, think about experiences, consumables, and then of course just what does your partner like? That's where you start. And if he could put in the effort to get a gaming gift card, could he not have put in the effort to get a gift card to, I don't know, her favorite store, or a class pack at a gym that she loves, not as a gym membership as a gift, because that gets dicey, but if she loves it, right? And or an experience for them to do something together. Maybe they're both fans of the same sports team, or there's a play coming to town or something. You can just try and broaden how you think about gift giving to have it be about the intention rather than the actual gift itself.
Is there some onus on the receiver to communicate what they like, or does the person giving the gift have to really figure it out in secret for themselves?
You can absolutely ask. Be like, hey, I know your anniversary is coming up. I really want to get you something special, and I'm drawing a blank and I feel bad about that. Can you give me any tips? Because we don't always know what someone would like, especially in a new relationship, or if you've been feeling disconnected recently. You can absolutely ask. And the other pitfall that I see in couples is people expecting a certain amount of mind reading. So I didn't see it in the text for this example, but if she was expecting something and didn't communicate it, that is on her.
Yes.
I think that I see this often. Like if she was expecting, tickets to something, or she was expecting, like she did request a specific item and it didn't happen. Or if she did not request it and then it didn't happen, well, okay, that is on her.
Speak to me a little bit about love languages. Like, for example, I'm an acts of service person. I'm taking the cat poop to the garbage bin. I'm cleaning up the kitchen. I'm cooking. I'm doing things like that. My girlfriend is very like touch and physical affection based. Mm-hmm. We don't quite line up completely, but the good news is we have a cat whose love language is cuddling, so the two of them pair off. What if just the way that one expects to have nice gestures expressed isn't quite how the other person does it?
Yeah, absolutely. And gifts is a love language. And I think if you're partnered with someone whose love language is gifts and that's not your love language, you can just be kind of like, what do I do here? So the 5 love languages, which is a theory developed that has been widely accepted. I don't think it's researched or anything, but it just resonates with many, many people. It's Gary Chapman. Developed it, and he had a background in pastoral counseling, and so he was working with a lot of couples, and he saw this showing up very frequently on his counseling couch. So the 5 love languages are gift giving, quality time, physical touch, words of affirmation, and acts of service. And most of us have a primary one that we express and receive love through. And this can be really helpful in figuring out how to celebrate your partner on those milestones.
All right. Well, Laurel, thanks for talking to me about this somewhat fun story. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks.
Laurel Vander Toorn is a licensed therapist, and she runs Laurel Therapy Collective in California and Florida. Coming up next, what really makes an ideal worker? Is it commitment, flexibility, or simply not being pregnant? After the break, we'll explore new research on maternity leave and hidden bias in the workplace. If you think most companies don't discriminate because of this stuff, the results of this study might shock you.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
When did making plans get this complicated? It's time to streamline with WhatsApp, the secure messaging app that brings the whole group together. Use polls to settle dinner plans. Send event invites and pin messages so no one forgets Mom's 60th. And never miss a meme or milestone. All protected with end-to-end encryption. It's time for WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone. Learn more at whatsapp.com.
The missing link between scientific journals and relationship counseling. The last show with David Cooper.
There is a new UK-based study that uncovers the hidden biases we have around maternity leave in the workplace. While some employers embrace fairness, others seem to openly admit to discrimination, and the balance falls somewhere in between. You'd be surprised how these biased attitudes can pop up in places we think they don't exist. I'm here with someone who's done research in this area. Her name is Dr. Helen Kowalewska. She's an assistant professor of social policy at the University of Bath in the UK. Helen, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm always so shocked when people say, quote, the quiet part out loud. When you talk to employers about whether they discriminate against pregnant applicants, were you surprised by some of the responses you saw?
Yeah, to be honest, I was quite surprised at how sort of open some of them were and how blatantly discriminatory. You know, some of them quite openly admitting that, yes, I would I mean, one of them literally said, yes, I would discriminate against a pregnant applicant. I wouldn't say anything to her face, but I wouldn't recruit her. And it was quite surprising that, some of them also openly admitting to kind of denying requests for flexible working when women came back, because they were sort of had these assumptions that women would be kind of too exhausted or too distracted by their kind of new role at home to do a good job. But also what was really surprising was this wasn't just about money, right? So like quite often we kind of can see from a rational perspective, okay, yes, it's going to cost the employer money, therefore that's why they're not supportive of it. But actually there was kind of more deeper ideas kind of about what makes an ideal worker and kind of what's fair and what's right, not just for the person taking maternity leave, but also for the employer.
Interesting. This concept of fair and right didn't apply to pregnant people or people just coming back to work after having a kid?
So for some of the employers it did. So for those that took a more supportive stance, yes. They were talking sort of very much about seeing they had a moral or a social duty towards employers to kind of support employers, not just as employees in the workplace, but also as whole people with like obviously broader lives. And so they were very supportive of employers taking leave. And also, there were kind of the productivity benefits like retention and things like that. But yeah, for some of those employers who were kind of more hostile, they felt very much like legislation and, kind of the shift towards greater kind of work-family balance had almost tipped the scales so far in favor of employees that it was working against them, and that they were kind of almost becoming like the victims of this new kind of legislation.
So the perception there is that it's not fair to the company. They should be able to do and maybe discriminate how they want. Taking a step back here, how do you go out to research something like this? Is it just interviewing employers with very kind of pointed questionnaires? How do you collect the data to kind of come to these conclusions?
So the data is based on interviews with managers. So there was a big survey that interviewed, I think, like 3,000 managers across the UK. And then kind of a sample of those were selected who kind of had all these different characteristics to try and get nice variation. And then, it's a case of going out to the employers' workplaces and asking them questions, what do they actually think? And that's really important because, we have these policies on paper. We can say everyone in the UK, for instance, has the right to maternity leave for up to a year for every child they have. But, how does that actually translate into practice? Because we can have all those laws laid out, but if we've got certain employers, that don't think that that's fair for them or don't think that that's right, they can discriminate and biases can creep in terms of how they treat those women. And therefore, that's why it's really important to talk to actual employers to get at kind of what's going on beneath the surface. Because we can have these surveys that say X% of employers think this, but why? And so that's kind of, the approach.
Interesting. And you identify different sort of styles of employers, risk-averse, business-first, value-driven. Can you briefly tell me about these styles and how they ended up acting in kind of subtle ways with their biases here?
Yeah, so the value-driven ones were like the most supportive ones. They were the ones who very much kind of saw a supportive approach to maternity leave as kind of actually really beneficial. Not just kind of the right thing to do for society, but also beneficial for them in terms of helping to reduce employee turnover. And, they remarked on how when they meet employees taking maternity leave with support, they often come back kind of more driven and kind of more loyal and happier people when they come back to the workforce, and actually that's better for their company as well. And what was interesting about that group as well is because a lot of them drew on kind of personal experiences. So for instance, a couple of them had kind of had their own fertility struggles, and that kind of highlighted to them how pregnancy isn't something that you can necessarily plan. It can sometimes happen or it might not happen, and so it's something that kind of we can't just expect employees to be able to sort of manage or time perfectly, and actually it's something that's not necessarily always in our control. And then the more risk-averse employers were kind of, they saw it as, rather than an investment like the other group, they saw it as a real risk. If you're hiring a woman who is pregnant or might become pregnant, that's a real risk for them as employers, because not only is it going to potentially cost them money, but also they think it's unfair. So there was very much this attitude that maternity leave was almost like a choice that women were making to kind of, and really signaling their lack of commitment to their jobs, and that it was something they were doing as almost to kind of gain an advantage. So there were kind of beliefs that a lot of the time, it wouldn't just be going out of the workforce for a certain amount of time. It would actually be permanent withdrawal because a lot of them wouldn't come back. But then they felt that employers were often dishonest about that because they wanted to keep the money coming. There was kind of no recognition of the structural factors that, like, why you might not be able to go back to work, maybe lack of childcare, maybe lack of affordability, things like that.
And this was the group where these open opinions of bias and this open discrimination seemed to be the worst.
Yeah, exactly. And then there was this kind of middle group that was kind of very much role-based discrimination. So what I mean is, like, they were generally okay with maternity leave if it was taken by employees who were quite easy to replace. But if it was taken by someone who was in like a specialist role, or like in quite a client-facing role, or like a managerial role where they felt that there was kind of a lot more demands and it was hard to replace them, there was a lot of resistance. And so they'd quite often accommodate, for instance, flexible returns for those more junior staff, but not for those more senior staff, where they felt that kind of the idea of being away from the workplace for a certain amount of time and then coming back, as they saw it, exhausted, time sensitive, distracted, just wasn't commensurate with kind of professional expectations of those roles.
In that risk-averse group, some managers describe mothers, as you say, as fragile or trying to game the system. Why do you think these ugly stereotypes persist, like even now in 2025, when it would seem like we're not supposed to have them, like the average person would say they don't have these biases, but yet there they are?
I think that's a really interesting question, and I wish I could answer it, but I'm not sure why it persists. I think a lot of it is to do with kind of, first of all, a lot of these managers were sort of in positions themselves of perhaps being the owners of the business or in like operational management. So their kind of job is very much to keep an eye on the numbers, to maybe think more in terms of kind of business output and profit over
individual well-being,
yeah, things like that. Yeah. And also, if it's your business, you can potentially feel kind of more invested in those kinds of aspects. They were also more likely to be small businesses as well. And for sure, smaller businesses, they've got tighter margins. They're less likely to have kind of the workforce where they can, do kind of some workload sharing while someone's off. They're going to have to get someone in probably because they've potentially got one person doing this job. And it's just, yeah. And also, but importantly, I would say as well, those managers who tended to be more risk averse were also less likely to have had experience of managing maternity leave. And I think sometimes the lack of kind of experience can feed into kind of perpetuating the idea that it's disruptive rather than actually just part of being a human.
Well, Helen, thanks for coming on the show and sharing your research with me. I've enjoyed the chat. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Dr. Helen Kowalewska is an assistant professor of social policy at the University of Bath in the UK. Up next, the gender pay gap is narrowing. However, one of the reasons, people are just having less kids, which is not a good solution to equal pay at all. More details on that coming up soon.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
So good.
New fall arrivals are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Get ready to save big with up to 60% off Vince, Kurt Geiger London, and more.
How did I not know Rack has Adidas?
Because there's always something new.
Join the Nordy Club at Nordstrom Rack to unlock exclusive discounts on your favorite brands. Shop new arrivals first and more. Plus, get an extra 5% off every Rack purchase with a Nordstrom credit card. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
The show that asks the questions other shows are afraid to ask. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Despite progress over the decades, women in the U.S. still earn less than men. And one surprising factor shrinking that gap is women are simply having fewer kids. But should pay equality really hinge on one's family size? No, it shouldn't. And I'm here to discuss this with Dr. Alexandra Killewald, a sociology professor from the University of Michigan. Sasha, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
You wrote an article, and you do show that the pay gap is narrowing, which at first glance is kind of exciting, isn't it?
Absolutely. Compared to 40 years ago, women are doing better compared to men in their pay. The less good news is that progress has really slowed down since roughly 1990.
Oh, so there was sort of a lot of progress in a short amount of time, and then boom, it kind of narrowed off or leveled off.
You got it.
When we start to pick apart the why, things start to get a little more murky. One thing you write about is that women are simply having fewer children. Can you explain how that translates to higher wages for women in the workplace? And side note, aren't men also having fewer children?
They sure are. And that's also part of the story. So it turns out that when women have kids, their wages tend to go down. We call that the motherhood penalty for women. But when men have kids, particularly when they're partnered to a woman, their wages tend to go up a little bit. So for every kid you have, it's kind of driving a wedge between men's and women's wages. So as people had fewer kids, that wedge got a little bit smaller.
So that this mechanism exists to this day is regrettable, but the mere fact that people are having less kids means that mechanism's not at play. Boom, slightly higher pay for women, I guess is the conclusion here.
That's right.
So why does this happen? Why do men seem to make a little more? Why do women seem to make less when kids enter the equation?
Yeah, so for the motherhood penalty, there are a lot of factors at play. One of them, of course, is that women still continue to do the bulk of caregiving for children. That doesn't mean that men don't help, but women are more likely to pull back from paid work when they have a child or when they have a second child. So when women take on more caregiving, that means it tends to disrupt their work experience or have them move to part-time work instead of full-time work, or maybe change employers to a more family-friendly occupation. And all those things tend to push down women's wages. Of course, employers can also discriminate against moms, and there is some evidence showing that when employers are confronted with similar applicants, one of whom's a mom and one of whom's not, they tend to prefer the childless applicant.
Despite maybe outwardly saying they don't do that, that resume just sort of
Absolutely.
Gets thrown off the pile, whereas the other person's doesn't.
For men, on the other hand, becoming a dad, maybe it leads a couple to kind of renegotiate what's going on in the household. We also have this strong, enduring norm of men as providers. So I want to be clear that this isn't always great for men either. They may decide that they need to make some decisions in order to provide for their family financially. That may mean moving to a job they don't love or spending more time traveling or something else. But the consequence for pay is women tend to do worse, men tend to do better.
To someone who would say, and to be clear, I'm not that someone, women should just have less kids or not have kids. Yeah. Why would a comment like that be so unfair, even ridiculous, as a solution to pay inequality?
Yeah, I think that how many children people have and whether they have children is a deeply personal question. And so I don't have a perspective on what the right number of kids is for any given family. My hope is that people in the US and around the world can have the number of kids that feels right for them without their career having to hinge on that. Also, there's a lot of conversations happening right now of what happens in a world where we have fewer children, what happens to the Social Security system and so on. So that's not my particular bet, but you don't have to have this individual investment in moms and dads to care about what happens when we have fewer kids.
Yeah, I mean, my response to how many kids a family should have is however many they should want. It's none of my business.
For sure.
Now, is there a limit to this fewer kids explanation? Like, this pay gap, is it just going to level off to a point where, like, there still exists a gap between women and men, and there's nothing women can do to change it?
I don't think there's nothing that we can do to change it, but I'll say a couple things. One, of course, there's lots of other stuff that's going on that's influencing the pay gap. The reason that women have closed the pay gap with men isn't just because they're having fewer kids. They're also going to school more, they're working more, they're moving into more high-paying occupations. And all those trends, I think, can continue. But today's young women already have more education than their male peers, and they're still not making as much money. So that sort of suggests, yeah, women can keep out-educating men, but it's not clear how far that'll take us. I think in order to make progress here, we have to both reduce the costs of parenthood for women in terms of their careers, and then also think about the other sources of that enduring gap, like women tending to work in occupations that pay less than men.
What about workplace policy changes that could help with these parenthood penalties for women, maybe bonuses for men? What would you want workplaces to do differently so that this wouldn't exist anymore?
It's a great question. I think there's room for both policies that are focused on families. So it doesn't even actually have to be the workplace. It could also be the government, for example, intervening to subsidize childcare or to provide economic bonuses to parents to give them a little extra money to make ends meet. Outside of those strictly family policies, we also live in a country where people work really long hours. And so having a full-time job and caring for a child in the US is harder than it would be in a country where work weeks were just a little bit shorter. Just a real 40-hour work week, I think, might also make a difference.
Now, how much of this issue is pay itself and not things like people not getting promotions, people not getting leadership opportunities, workplaces discriminating based on career interruptions like paternity or maternity leave? Is it just pay itself, or are these broader issues at play as well?
The broader issues are definitely at play. I think part of what shapes our pay is, of course, whether we got promoted, whether we got a good annual review. And those are all places where the employer may intervene and decide that moms are or are not doing, the kind of job that they want to see. And I think that's one of the hard parts in studying this topic is a real reason that mothers earn less is because they take time out of the labor market, so they have less experience. That isn't necessarily discrimination by the employer, but it's a gender unequal system that continues to put most of the responsibility for caregiving on moms that makes it harder for them to keep up in their careers.
So a reframe there would be a more even caregiving situation at home.
That's right. And again, I think we have good evidence that men are spending more time caring for their children, for example, but in opposite sex married couples, women continue to do about 2/3 of the housework, and that's similar to what was true decades ago. Another challenge is that the demands of caregiving for kids have just gone up and up and up. So even though men are doing more childcare than they used to, women are doing more too. So we haven't really hit that point yet where men's caregiving is taking the load off of women.
So anyone at home who's in a heterosexual couple with kids, what recommendations would you have to them based on your research?
Well, just like I think parents should be able to have, or people should be able to have as many kids as they want, I also think that for an individual couple, I'm not going to tell them what the right arrangement is for them. For some people, the right thing is to have 2 full-time employed parents. For some people, it's to trade off who works, or a variety of other arrangements. So my hope, again, is to make it easier for people to have a wider range of opportunities available to them. So one reframe that I would make is to say it's not all on the individual. We have to work to have structures that will enable this range. The other thing I would say is if you're in a partnership, talking to your partner about what's going to work for both of you is probably the path forward.
Sasha, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing having this discussion with me. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Dr. Alexandra Killewald is a sociology professor at the University of Michigan. All right, we've got some time, so let me tell you, listener, singular intended, that the last show is available as a podcast. All you got to do is head to www.lastshow.pizza. That's .pizza, not .com, for more details. Or just search David Cooper Last Show in your favorite podcast app. And there you can subscribe. Catch whatever parts of this show that you missed. Like, for example, if you couldn't catch us last night. Also, there is some bonus content on that podcast, stuff you won't hear on the radio, so you're going to want to subscribe and check it out. Or maybe you're not. I can't tell you what to do. Up next, what if future doctors learned as much from their classmates' stories as they did from medical textbooks? We will explore how storytelling is changing medical education in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
The last show with David Cooper. procrastinate your life away with us.
In medical school, future doctors memorize thousands of facts. They cram out of textbooks, and they have lectures that can sometimes feel like massive raw knowledge dumps. But what happens when the lessons come not from textbooks, but from the personal stories told by your classmates, like a classmate sharing a real experience that they had with the illness you're studying? What happens? The students learn better. I'm here to discuss with Dr. Elyse Olesinski, who worked on this research. She's a resident at Massachusetts General Hospital. Elyse, welcome to the show.
Hi, David. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to share about the program that I worked on. It's called the Student Perspectives Initiative, and it really is an opportunity for medical students to talk about things that they've been through and hopefully, enrich their learning and that of their peers.
Where does this idea that storytelling is going to come in as such a powerful tool in teaching future doctors? Like, why come up with this idea in the first place?
I think so much of our preclinical medical education is rooted in this concept of narrative medicine. So bringing that personal experience, building empathy through hearing these lived experiences and stories. And so one of my colleagues, he's an alumni from the Boston University Chobanian and Avedisian School of Medicine. He came up with this concept that what if the stories that we're talking about in preclinical education weren't from patients that we didn't know, but from our peers. And the more that he got to thinking about this, the more he really wanted to share about his own experience and kind of get a group of students together who also wanted to speak about it. And it kind of became this snowball effect of a lot of people really wanting to speak about what they'd been through. And I think it kind of took off from there and into this whole program.
All right, the Students' Perspectives Initiatives. How does it actually work? Like, what would a typical story session in a lecture or case study look like?
So the program is entirely student-run, which I think is one of the most amazing strengths. And we coordinate with faculty who are leading the lecture for the day. So when you're learning about, GI conditions and, inflammatory bowel disease, a student who has a diagnosis of Crohn's disease might want to speak after that lecture has taken place. So you have that context of this is, the disease, this is the pathophysiology. And now let me hear from somebody who has lived through that, because it's a lot different. It's not just, the words off of the textbook page. It's what does it mean to go in and get tests done and be diagnosed. And so typically students would share really in a free form kind of way what they'd been through. They might show pictures, they might talk about lab values. And then there's usually a question and answer at the end of each session. So our peers can, learn more about, what they've been through. If they have specific questions that come up, we can talk about that as well.
And did you study like the learning retention or how much the students got out of sessions like this that weren't just, reading a textbook, having a teacher describe it, actually having a peer share their story with an illness?
We did. So we performed, it's a mixed methods study. So we looked quantitatively at, surveys that students ranked on how much they were able to remember content, if they felt like they knew their peers better and had a better sense of community, because all of this was going on during the COVID-19 pandemic as well. So, how were we able to help people get to know each other? That was one of the things we looked at. And then also when people finished from their preclinical studies and went on to work on their clinical clerkships, were you able to put into practice what you learned all of those years before and what you heard from a story? So we measured that from a survey, and then also from a qualitative aspect, wanted people to reflect, on their experiences, and really had an amazing, I think, response. People really responded positively to the program and felt like they learned a lot from it, which was really amazing to see.
It sounds like a program with very little, if any, negatives. I mean, why not? This is such a nice sort of rich addition to an otherwise regular medical education. You mentioned Crohn's disease. At the commercial break, you alluded that you actually participated as someone sharing an experience with some sort of illness. What were some of the stories? What was your story?
Yeah, so some of the stories I think are anywhere from something like having keloid scars, somebody having migraines, somebody getting a lumbar puncture, all the way up to, celiac disease, breast cancer, substance use, and in my case, it was hemolytic uremic syndrome. And it's, things that sometimes are bread and butter medicine you hear about all the time, and sometimes more rare conditions. And I think it's a lot more memorable regardless of what the condition is. We didn't have a preference of like, you have to be so rare to share your story. It really was just about what it meant to be a patient in any aspect.
I feel like I should know this. I'm not a doctor. What is hemolytic uremic syndrome, and should I know that? And if I should, maybe should the listeners should too? What exactly is it?
So it's a condition that comes up when people contract one of the pathogenic variants of E. coli, and your immune system kind of freaks out from all of the bacterial toxins, and so your blood cells can get destroyed, your kidneys can get really sick based off of that. And so that was something that happened to me when I was a teenager. And, there was another peer of mine who also shared a similar story with it as well, which was, even for me to know that somebody else in my class had been through the same experience that I had been through. I would have known that if the program hadn't really brought us together in that way.
Oh, cool. That's just this weird added benefit that I didn't even think of. Now, I'm sure there's people that think medical school is just like rigorous. It should be study-based. There should be no personal experiences shared by doctors. I'm not of that opinion, but to a critic like that, how would you respond?
I think that it makes us better. I think there's a big, idolized concept of doctors are perfect, doctors can't be vulnerable. We have to, suppress all of these things that we've been through so that we can be the best version of ourselves for our patients. And I think if we break down those walls and embrace being more vulnerable, not only does it make us better communicators with our patients, it also makes us more together in the community where you're not afraid to talk about something with a colleague. If you're going through a really difficult time, you will reach out for help because hey, my senior resident is also going through that. And I think it just makes everybody better and a lot less afraid to talk about these hard things.
Do you think there's room for doctors to be more vulnerable in their education? Do you think that could help them with learning?
I think so. I think narrative medicine programs at their core are designed to promote that vulnerability, that reflection on these hard experiences, on the human experience, of what it means to be a patient and what it means to be sick. And I think that the more that we embrace that and try not to shut off, our emotions and what we're feeling, I think we'll be much more effective.
Beyond this kind of beautiful connection you made with a classmate, knowing that they suffered from the same thing as you or had a similar story to you, were there any stories shared by students that really you were struck by or changed how you thought about this kind of teaching?
I think one of the stories that struck me was a peer who shared actually about her father's experience, because that was something that we welcomed as well. If you didn't personally have a story, but you were, really going through something with a family member, you could speak about that. And I think it's very powerful to hear about somebody live through the experience themselves, but also what does it mean to be a family member? What does it mean to be a caregiver who's supporting somebody through a difficult time? As doctors, we go into a room, we see a patient, we see a family, and it's a snapshot. It's 10 minutes out of our day, and then we kind of move on to the next patient. And so I think hearing more from her about the longer, repercussions of what doctors are saying to them and how you're integrating all of this information and trying to care for somebody was really powerful. And I think those stories are equally as important.
Interesting. And what was the particular ailment with this person, or is it sort of private?
So just thinking about, just a heart attack, it's something that so many people will experience in their lifetime. And so what does that look like? What is the recovery process of, cardiac rehab and getting all of the tests done and stents and medications? So I think, again, it's something super common, but we don't really hear about it all that much from a personal standpoint.
If there are medical educators listening to the program and they're interested in this kind of teaching or thinking or doing it in their classroom, what would you recommend they do?
I am a big proponent of, bringing this program to as many medical schools as possible. I know, Boston University is the first where it's really taken off. I know that the previous founder, he's at Mount Sinai, and he is currently this year piloting in the fall semester another Student Perspectives initiative for medical students there. So I think it's super easy to implement. It's student driven. It really takes the lift off of administrators and faculty, and it's just really easy to do, and I think has a really amazing lasting effect. So I think anybody who's interested in this type of work, let's bring it to the classroom as many places as we can.
Elyse, thanks for talking to me about this form of educating in medicine. It's been really interesting.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I hope that everyone enjoys and maybe is excited to, bring more of their own perspectives into their lives every day.
Dr. Elyse Olesinski is a resident at Massachusetts General Hospital. Elyse, thanks again.
Thanks so much, David.
In a few moments' time, imagine you go to the doctor's office with an ailment. You might be feeling down. A prescription is something you might expect, but instead of medication, what if that prescription came in the form of a poem? Well, that's exactly what one person does. She used to be a psychotherapist. Now she's a poet therapist. We'll tell you what the prescription process is like in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Chronic spontaneous urticaria, or chronic hives with no known cause. It's so unpredictable. It's like playing pinball. Itchy red bumps start on my arm, then my back, sometimes my legs. Hives come out of nowhere. And it comes and goes. But I just found out about a treatment option at treatmyhives.com. Take that, chronic hives. Learn more at treatmyhives.com.
The only talk show with an introduction that mentions its own introduction. And that's happening right now in this introduction. The Last Show with David Cooper.
I'm begging for a mention. Yeah, you just want attention.
Imagine going to the doctor's office, maybe a therapist's office, feeling down, feeling some sort of ailment, but instead of a prescription for a medication, that person prescribed you a poem. Well, that's exactly what our next guest does. She's a poet. Her name is Ronna Bloom. Check out her book, In a Riptide, available wherever books are sold. Ronna, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Prescription poems. I'd like to think that if I went into the doctor's office with scurvy, they would write me a prescription for an orange. Sometimes pills are not what we need when we feel a certain way.
That's right. Yeah. I think the poem maybe is a prescription of last resort. It's not the first thing you think of. It may not even be something you think of at all. But it's like when nothing else is touching whatever it is that you need, a poem can.
Words can be extremely powerful. They can shift our emotions just like that. It's one of the most powerful mediums there is. So we shouldn't be surprised that poems should shift the way we feel, should we?
No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, people say things all the time that hurt us, but they can also say things all the time that offer us comfort, a presence, feeling less alone. Poems can do that.
So walk me through how you've prescribed poems to people. How do you know that this is your calling? Like, how do you even come up with this as something to do in the first place?
That's a good question. So years ago, I was a psychotherapist. And every once in a while, working with a client, because I was always a poet, I would think of a poem that might fit for them. And I'd wait and make sure that it was something for them and not for me, because I love poetry. And I would read the poem to them, and often it would have an impact that was greater than something I could say in regular language like this now. And so I started to share it with other people, and I realized it had some power beyond, for me, writing poems for me. And I started to bring them to staff meetings. And when I left the job I was at, the people in the staff meeting said, well, will you be coming in to give us a poem? And then I realized, well, this seems to have some legs. So maybe I should consider what the poetry does beyond just writing it for a book or for an audience. And so I started to work with a Dr. Alan Peterkin at Mount Sinai Hospital, and I became the poet in residence there for about 7 years. And I developed this thing. Initially, it was writing the poem on the spot, the spontaneous poetry booth. And then in the hospital, I realized that was a little tiny bit too intense. So we developed this thing where I had these poems, and I'm holding them up, although the listeners can't see them. You can. These poems on like little prescription pads with like an RX.
Yeah, they look very official, almost like it was for medication.
Yeah, exactly. And there are many poems. I just collect ones that seem that they might fit. So there are poems by me, but there are also poems by Emily Dickinson or Langston Hughes, or that's my medicine chest of poems you're hearing. And so I'll sit with you if you want to try it right now.
Please, I've got everything. I'm a Jew, so I got anxiety, I got depression, I've got every ailment. I have what's called sympathetic hypochondria. If someone just tells me about an illness, all of a sudden I have the same symptoms as them. Can you fix me with a poem?
Okay, so what I do is I'll invite you to sit with me. I'll be at a table somewhere with a big sign that says the poet is in. And I'll invite you to sit with me for a few minutes. And I know we're kind of excited because we're on the radio, but I'll say like, let's get a little bit quieter. So sure. If it's possible for you to kind of land over there in your chair and ask you right now, when I ask this question, You just see what comes. What do you need a poem for?
I don't.
Pause for a minute. I'm gonna just stop you for a minute and drop down into your body. It's not a head thing. I saw your eyes go up to your head. It's not a head thing. It's actually a feeling thing. So you may actually notice a feeling. You may not actually want to say it on the air, but
No, I'll say it. I guess I'm stressed all the time. I'm anxious all the time. Can we get a poem for that?
yeah, I'm sure we can. I think. I shouldn't say I'm sure. So let me ask you a couple more questions about anxiety, anxious and stress. So anything in particular actually helps when you're like that?
Focusing on my breathing. I know this sounds silly, but a mantra. I especially before I go to perform, I tell myself, like, I know what I'm doing because I've done it many times before and I can do it now. Like sometimes when I'm very nervous for an interview or the mic gets hot and the show makes me anxious, I just sort of repeat in my head, I know what I'm doing because I've done it before and I've got experience, you know?
Great. Okay. So that's a wonderful actual mantra for anybody else too. It's really powerful.
Well, it even goes further. I say I know what I'm doing and I know that I know that. I know it seems kind of meta, but that's my mantra. I know what I'm doing and I know.
I know that even if I'm anxious, I know that I know that.
Yeah. So mantras and then breathing would be the two things I do.
Okay, I'm shuffling. You're hearing the noise because I'm looking through the poems for something I want. And okay, I have 2 poems. I'm going to read them both and see if one of these lands.
Sure. And I'm going to not be sarcastic and not be anxious and just be present and pay attention.
Yes, you can be anxious because that's already happening, but...
True. But the sarcasm will drop.
Great, that's good. Lost. Stand still. The trees ahead and bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here, and you must treat it as a powerful stranger. Must ask permission to know it and be known. The forest breathes. Listen. It answers, I have made this place around you. If you leave it, you may come back again saying, here. No 2 trees are the same to raven. No 2 branches are the same to wren. If what a tree or a bush does is lost on you, you are surely lost. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you.
It helped because it sort of like has the effect of breathing, of focusing and being present and in the moment. And I think in this way, poetry can be very restorative, notwithstanding all the themes in it that can really touch people.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad, because it's really what I was feeling too, is that the forest is breathing with you, right? It's just like, we can do this.
I live in downtown New York City, so in terms of nature, we got cockroaches and rats. Take your pick. I should be around trees more. They are very relaxing, aren't they?
Yeah. And I don't know how much time we have, actually. We probably don't have enough for another one, but I would read you another one. I won't, because...
Is it every mother's dream when their child, who's, got a decent job, ostensibly they're a psychotherapist, leaves that to become a poet? Because for me, it was not my mother's dream to leave like a corporate career to be in radio. Well,
my mother's a painter, so...
Oh, okay. So she was probably happy that you transitioned.
She's probably okay with that, yeah. And there's not time for me to read another one, but I would. And because the truth is, poetry, unlike medication, you can double dose. So I might have offered you another one or another couple to see what else might land.
Well, I guess if people are interested in poems, they could check out your book, In a Riptide. Yeah, I just worked that in there like a real professional. That's available wherever books are sold. Ronna, this has been nice. It's been nice to be very present and in the moment. Maybe it did help a little bit with my constant anxiety. I don't know.
I hope so. That's nice. And if you want, you're going to be in New York, but if people want to come and have a poem prescribed, I'm going to be at Word on the Street this weekend.
That's a festival in Toronto, and that's September, 27th and 28th?
27th and 28th. And on my website or on the Word on the Street website, I think you can see what hours I'm going to be there.
Well, Ronna Bloom is a poet based out of Toronto who writes prescriptions that are poems to folks who might need them. Ronna, it was nice to meet you. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
Coming up after the break, starting university is stressful for just about anyone, but a new study suggests it's especially tough for students raised by overprotective parents like you, Mom. So why does parenting style matter so much to students making this transition? We'll tell you up next.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
At Blinds.com, it's not just about window treatments. It's about you, your style, your space, your way. Whether you DIY or want the pros to handle it all, you'll have the confidence of knowing it's done right. From free expert design help to our 100% satisfaction guarantee, everything we do is made to fit your life and your windows. Because at Blinds.com, the only thing we treat better than windows is you. Visit Blinds.com now for up to 40% off site-wide, plus a professional measure at no cost. Rules and restrictions apply.
Where intellectual honesty gets witness protection from social prosecution. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Heading off to university, it can be exciting but also stressful, especially if you've got an overbearing mother. I'm thinking of you, Mom. A new study suggests that students raised by very protective parents may feel that stress of moving out more. They feel higher levels of anxiety during that transition from home to school. Let's discuss that with someone who's worked on this research, Dr. Anna Weinberg, who's a professor in the Department of Psychology at McGill University. Anna, welcome to the show.
David, thank you for having me.
It's one of those things that we all kind of know it when we see it, but it's hard to define. What exactly do psychologists mean when they say overprotective parenting? What are some of the features, if you can call them that?
Yeah, that's a really good question and one that we get a lot. So what we mean by overprotective parenting is parents who kind of broadly speaking limit their kids' autonomy. So that means like parents who can do things like intervening on kids' conflicts or interactions with teachers or other parents or other kids, but also trying to protect them from all different kinds of dangers out there in the world. And so it really involves doing a lot of things to kind of try to control your kids' environment and your kids' experiences and not allowing them the freedom to explore more and to, potentially fail more.
I feel personally attacked by that definition, but thank you for sharing it. Let's talk about when a student leaves a nest like that, so to speak, that transition to university. Is it a vulnerable time for anxiety, even with students who have ostensibly supportive families, but that might also be overprotective?
Yeah, absolutely. And, so one of the reasons that we chose this period is not because we're really interested specifically in undergraduate students, but because in my lab, we study periods of increased stress or periods of vulnerability for the development of psychopathology. And so you have at any kind of major life transition point, people exciting things happen for people, but they also can become more vulnerable to develop things like anxiety or depression. And the transition to university for a lot of people is exactly that. It's a big life transition. You're making a huge number of changes all at the same time. So, you're changing your social group, you're changing the academic demands that you have. Many people are living away from home for the very first time. They have to navigate independence in a totally new way. So all of that is a huge opportunity for growth, but then some people will also suffer in those experiences.
And a change of standard of living. Like I only shared a bathroom with my brothers. All of a sudden I was sharing we had co-ed bathrooms. That's an adversarial bathroom environment.
We had co-ed bathrooms too back in like 1995. People talk about this now and I'm like, we've been doing this, man.
It's rude, okay? I should not have to share and you know what? I digress.
But you were sharing a bathroom with women.
I was. And I have IBS. I'm getting way off the mark.
Okay.
How does your team measure parenting style, stressors, anxiety? Like, I know we talk about this stuff generally a lot, and people throw around platitudes or non-rigorous findings, but how do you actually study this stuff?
So in this study, we use primarily self-report. Or actually, in this study, it was entirely self-report that we were publishing. So we had questionnaires that assessed symptoms in the past couple of weeks that people were experiencing. So it was asking things like, did you fear interacting with other people? Did you have sensations of kind of panicky sensations in your body? Or did you avoid a lot of things that you were kind of feeling afraid of? So that was how we assessed symptoms of anxiety. Then we also had a questionnaire that asked about experiences that you had. So are you fighting with roommates? Are you having trouble, figuring out how to eat or where to eat? So the stressors that are, that are included in this transition to university. And then we just asked questions about parents. Like, did your parents ever make you feel like you couldn't succeed if they weren't around, or that you couldn't navigate the world if they weren't around?
Wow. Again, feeling personally attacked. This link, though, so you found it. Why do you think it exists? I mean, I don't mind if you speculate here. Why does this link between overprotective parents and anxiety when kids leave the nests and go to school, why do you think it exists?
Yeah. So this study doesn't speak to that specifically. Like it doesn't, as you say, it doesn't get at the mechanisms, but we know from a lot of other research. So we know from working with anxious kids and anxious parents that parents who are overprotective are, by limiting their kids' autonomy, they are preventing their kids oftentimes from developing skills to deal with stressors and skills to deal with challenges in the world, right? So if you always jump in when a kid fails or when a kid has a problem with a friend and you solve it for them, then the kid doesn't learn how to do that on their own. So we often use like a metaphor of, parenting your kid to launch them into adulthood is, like taking them to the ocean. So going to the ocean is really great. It's really exciting and, and fun. And also the ocean can be dangerous. There's choppy waves, there's undertows, there's sharks sometimes. You don't want the first time your kid experiences water to be when they get thrown into the ocean. You want them to have lots and lots of safer experiences before that, where they learn how to navigate these potential problems. They learn how to swim with a flotation device, and then you take it off. That you practice those skills before you get to like the big time so that you can effectively navigate the ocean.
Not all overprotective parents are that way because they're just like, I don't know, not great people, or I don't know what the reason would be. Sometimes it's in response to a child being overly anxious and they're just trying to protect them.
Absolutely.
Like they don't want their child to take risks because when they do, they get highly anxious. So they're overbearing as a way to kind of protect their kids. This cause and effect that I'm kind of getting at before I mention this, that doesn't always exist. It's kind of tangled up, right? And what would you say to parents who are just being protective in response to an anxious kid in the first place?
Yeah. So I have worked clinically with parents of anxious children as well. And that is, you're absolutely right, that a lot of times parents, and I've just first to back up, most of the time it's not because parents are bad people. Most of the time, even overprotective parents who don't have anxious kids are doing that out of love. It's deep concern and affection for their kids. And they just, I'm a parent. It's hard to watch your kids be upset. And the same thing is true for parents of anxious kids. It's really hard to watch your child be distressed about anything. And if you always stop that distress before the kid learns how to deal with it, if you always say, okay, you don't have to be afraid of that, let's walk away from, the dog or the spider, then the kid never learns how to cope with feelings of fear or anxiety. And then they learn themselves to avoid, and they learn themselves that, oh, I'm not a person who can deal with these feelings or these emotions. So we talk to parents about tolerating their own distress in order to help their kids do it.
Interesting. There's kids that are going to be delivered to universities or college dorms this way. I mean, the problem is already there. Is there a role that universities or other kids at school can help with students that aren't as resilient because of overprotective parents? Like, assuming I end up in university with overprotecting parents, what changes could be made at that point to help me?
Yeah. So, we can't do much about parenting at that point, but what we can do about is how the kid is at that point. So the kid's own anxiety. And what we tell any anxious people who come into, for example, our clinic here at McGill is that it's never too late to learn those skills. So it's great to learn them earlier, but it's never too late to learn how to cope with anxiety or fear. Like, we do this with 80-year-olds, we do this with 9-year-olds. So you can learn those things. It's sometimes a little bit harder when you're already deeply anxious, but we have really effective treatments. So, we can still help. And those are skills that you can learn like any other skill.
Looking ahead, what other questions you want to answer in this area? What would you like to see being looked into?
Yeah, so the primary research in our lab is actually looking at how kid and adolescent brains help us understand risk for anxiety and depression. So one of the things we've been looking at a lot recently is the effect of parenting on variability in how kids' brains function. So how how these parental behaviors can be embedded neurally and can be reflected in neural functioning, and then how that neural functioning can later predict anxiety and depression. But we're also working with some collaborators on developing parental interventions. So what can you do to help parents better tolerate distress and reduce their own feelings of anxiety around their kids? And will that have an effect on the kids' brain function and, of course, on the parental well-being?
And hopefully make them be less overbearing if they are in the first place.
Ideally, yeah.
Dr. Anna Weinberg is a professor in the Department of Psychology at McGill University in Montreal, Canada. Anna, thank you for joining me. I've enjoyed the chat.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's a wrap on the program. Don't forget to check out our podcast details on our website at www.lastshow.pizza. That's .pizza, not .com. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow night for our Hump Day Wednesday show. I am David Cooper, and this was not the first show. Cheers.
Hey girl, this is a matching set emergency. Ugh, my favorite Lululemon leggings and Define jacket. You know the set you got me years ago? The one you've seen me wear at every yoga class? Well, I just got back from a weekend trip and had left my gym bag at the B&B. Girl, I need to replace this outfit. Could you send me the link to where you got it? I need it ASAP. I don't know what I'll do without it. Thanks, girl.
Looking for your newest go-tos? Shop Lululemon's best sellers now at Lululemon.com.